My eyes, you're a hero in the industry's eyes. You had the balls to go out and do it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Todd Dankin. Welcome back to another edition of Becoming the King of Pot. And it's yet another special edition because, of course, joining me as always is the King of Pot, Bruce Perlowin. Bruce, welcome back.
Thank you, Todd. And again, it's great to have Tommy Powell on for their second part, too.
It is. Tommy's got some great stories that we're going to finish up from last week. But before we do, please hit the subscribe button, especially if you're on YouTube. It helps us here at Becoming the King of Pot, whether this is your first watch or your 100th watch or your 1,000th watch. Thank you for watching. And please wake the neighbors and tell the kids to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're looking for any Becoming the King of Pot merchandise, go over to our website at www.becomingtkop. That's TKOP, the King of Pot. BecomingTKOP.com. You can get some t-shirts, some hats, some stash bags, some mouse pads, and lots of other cool stuff. So check that out. So like Bruce mentioned, we are back with Tommy Powell, the author of the book Reefer, How Smugglers Won the War on Marijuana. And Tommy, of course, as we learned from part one, is a real pioneer in the cannabis space and in the marijuana smuggling space. Started out of St. Petersburg, Florida. So Tommy, welcome back. Thanks for spending some more time with us. We really are having some fun listening to you tell these stories about the early days of marijuana.
Certainly a pleasure.
Good. So last time we were chatting, you just got indicted for something, and you moved to Colombia. Let's talk about that and how you ended up in Colombia.
Well, I was in Detroit, and I found out that I think it was 1975, and I found out that I had an indictment coming out because I had some connections in the government that would tell me what was going on. And so
And what kind of connections did you have in the government? Like who did you know that you could get information like that?
a friend of mine, his girlfriend works in the United States prosecutor's office, and she heard everything.
Oh,
Okay.
nice. Yeah.
And later on, she really came to help me when my plea agreement was working out. So I knew
good.
that. So I says, okay, it's a big thing in Detroit. It's front page of the Detroit News, the Detroit Free Press. I'm dating the Olympic gold medal winner in Detroit. She's famous. I'm the fucking degenerate, you know. And they make it into you know, a sensational thing. So I packed my bags. I called my cousin up and I says, hey, Diane, she was a travel agent. I says, give me 5 tickets to Europe, round trip to everywhere in Europe that you can think of. And so I go by and pick them up from her. And I tell Cindy, pick a ticket, you know, where do you want to go? So she picked out the Munich flight. And there was, you know, flights to everywhere. And so I had my Learjet pilot fly to Flint Airport while me and her are wearing wigs and all dressed up in costumes and stuff like that. I had the Learjet fly me to Boston Airport, Logan Airport. And then from there, I took, I think, a Lufthansa flight over to Europe. And then I took a little vacation in Europe for a while, like a year and a half, and spent a lot of money and had good times. You know, Monaco.
Well, that's quite a vacation, a year and a half vacation.
Oh, he bought a couple. He bought a couple Mercedes Benz over there.
Pardon me, Bruce.
You bought a couple Mercedes Benz over there, or was it
BMWs? And Mini Coopers.
Yeah.
I bought some Mini Coopers I bought a Mini Cooper that was like the baddest ass Mini Cooper in the world. It was I bought it in Amsterdam, and it was done by some Italian family, you know, and souped up and everything. And 911 Porsche couldn't even come close to it, you know. And then I had a BMW that I bought from Schnitzer. This
Nice.
BMW raced at Watkins Glen, and I bought my 2 BMWs from Schnitzer in Frauheiling, Germany on the border of Austria, and, we became good friends, and he was a serious race car driver, Schnitzer. If you look him up, he was the best BMW driver in business that he had for BMW. And then I stayed there for, a year and a half, and I went down to Morocco.
Well, wait. What's
I
that
know.
like? Traveling around Europe, with all these millions of dollars, just kind of, living life and having a great time.
How can you imagine it?
I imagine it like it's unbelievable, right?
I mean, we had, pass, first class Eurail passes. Uh, I didn't use any of my planes there or anything like that, but, I lived in St. Moritz, I lived in Amsterdam, I had 3 places in Amsterdam. I lived in St. Moritz and traveled everywhere, that was what we were doing,
Yeah, so it's nice that you got to like enjoy the spoils of your hard work.
yeah, before I got in a little bit of trouble there afterwards. You know, I've been to, 32 countries. I've been in 23 different prisons and jails, and I've been kidnapped 3 times, and I've also, the president of Colombia asked me to make a speech in front of, the Congress why marijuana should be legal. I think that was about like 1967, 68. His name was, Julio Tubay Alea. He was the president. I went to the presidential palace and met him and everything.
Wow. Well, what's that like doing a speech like that in the 60s to advocating for cannabis?
It's smoke a joint,
Well,
sit around with
I'm
all your
on board
friends,
with you, buddy.
smoke a
I
joint,
hear
and
you.
that's all there is
Yeah.
to it. Today, everybody smokes these vapes and everything like that. They don't sit around in a circle and talk to each other and smoke a joint. It's kind of like a sacrament or something like that. They're I'm sorry for the squeaking of the chair. But,
Yeah.
it was
I've always said that about pot too, is that it's always, pre-COVID, right? You smoke a joint with just about anybody, right? And you're right, it's an experience, right? Because you hand somebody a joint and you're telling a story and it kind of goes around the circle and it's a bit of an event. You go to a bar and you're having cocktails with your friends, you're not sharing your drink with anybody, right? It's just a completely different vibe, and I totally get what you're saying because your experience is what you're experiencing as you're getting high and listening is different from my experience of my getting high and maybe speaking or listening and hearing it something a little differently. I've always said that about pod is that it brings people together, and it's interesting how that was your whole goal and that was Bruce's whole goal is to enlighten everybody and to show people how wonderful this thing was.
Well, what happened,
And is.
you'd sit around in that circle smoking a joint with everybody, and all of a sudden you're all turning into smugglers and all sorts of conspirators and everything trying to figure out how to change
Right.
the world, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And
like
when he
that
was
famous
in
scene in it's like that famous scene in Animal House where it was the 1950s and they're all hiding in the bathroom and sitting hiding in the bathtub and they're smoking a joint and at the end of it the young kid goes, "Can I buy some of this pot from you?" Right? Because he had such a great
There you
experience,
go.
right? That was
That's
yeah.
how it happened, you know?
by
Right.
the way, when Tommy was in Europe that time, he did a side trip to Lebanon to smuggle in a bunch of Lebanon hash.
Morocco. I went to
Morocco,
Morocco.
yeah, but it didn't work
Wow.
out 'cause, he was way more picky than I was. I brought in those bales. Last episode, he talked about he brought in the pillows. That was the higher quality Colombian. I just brought in high-grade commercial in, in press sacks
You
because
had to.
yeah, well, I only had 65-foot, steel albacore fishing boats. You had, what, 73-foot Desco fishing shrimpers, so they were bigger with 2 holes. Mine were 1 hole and a little bit smaller, so I had to bring in the, compressed bales to get my 30,000. pounds each load. He brought in 40,000 each load, and one time 60.
Right.
But the
Okay,
logistics
so
of
you
moving pillows as compared to pressed pot in an airplane, that's why you got pressed pot. You know, I never tried to do pressed pot, and I always like to do pillows. And I always got my reefer from the Fundacion area of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. You got to understand, I lived in Colombia for 7 years. I've been up the mountains and knew where everything was growing and everything. When I first went there, they were only growing it in near the mountainside of a city called Aracataca, and that was the best. That was the goal. And then they started growing it on the other three sides of the mountain. And then you got Valle du Par, and then you got Rio Hacha on the other side. And they were inferior quality, but they were still good, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, they say Colombia is the best place in the world to grow pot because it's right on the equator. And, you get 12 hours of sun and 12 hours of darkness, which is what you need. The temperature is always pretty much the same all year round. Is that what you saw there?
I didn't know that at the time. I
Right.
just
Right.
knew that they had good reefer, and I went there and found it.
Got it. Got it. So how'd you end up living there? You're traveling around Europe. You head over to Morocco. You have a foiled hash excursion. And how do you end up in Colombia?
Well, I worked my way back to the Bahamas via my Learjet, and my girlfriend left me, and so I didn't want to live in the Bahamas anymore. And I says, "Well, I still got an indictment on me. I always had indictments on me, I think." And so I just said, "Well, let's get it over with. I'll just move to Colombia. They ain't never going to get me out of there, man." My connections in Colombia were impeccable. I got
Right.
Pablo Escobar. I got the president of the country. I got my people on the coast of Magdalena and Santa Marta and Rio Hacha. You know, I knew all the families in Colombia. You got the Davila family, you got the Valle Blanca family, and they're all families, and they were all friends of mine.
Well, that's convenient. So what part of Colombia did you move to?
Santa Marta.
And what did you do? You were just a rich guy hanging out, or did you participate in more smuggles?
No, I was loading boats.
So that's the
So how
question
did
I
that work?
have.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
again, I read his book, and I'm reading it for the second
Oh, his
time.
book, Reefer: How Smugglers Won the War on Marijuana,
Uh,
now available at Amazon.
and it's a great read, and everyone should get that. But and you're in Colombia. I read that you're in Colombia for 7 years, but you didn't say how many boats you actually loaded. Do you have a number, or you remember what that was? One a year, 10 a year?
I know that I did 8 boats myself from Florida, and I probably did 6 or 7 that I loaded in Colombia.
So about one a
So you were
year.
still working. So were you working because you were running out of money? Were you working just because it was fun and
I
exciting?
was working because
Or
the Colombians told me I had to work.
ah, I gotcha. You can live here, but
Well, you gotta keep smuggling. I mean,
got it.
trust me, man, I lived in Santa Marta for 7 years on and off. I mean, I had two of the best bodyguards, man, that always went with me all the time. I've been all over that country from everywhere. Los Llanos down in the southern area. I didn't get to Leticia. I've been to Medellin, Cartagena, Valledupar. I've been everywhere, all over Colombia because while I was down there, I'm not going to stay in Santa Marta. I'm going to travel around and do things.
Sure.
And the Guajira up north, it's the most treacherous area you could go. And when I was going up there, it was like the most treacherous place on the planet Earth. You know, they shoot you for a nickel, you know? But the
Right.
Wahirian Indians are the Wahirian Indians, and they're really cool, and my partner was a Wahiro, you know?
Ah.
And, I got a hammock back there that I used to live in every day.
And by the way,
Oh,
did
really?
you sleep on 1,000,000 pounds of marijuana one time?
Yeah. Raphael, my connection down there, his name was Maracas. Very famous guy. He was one of my connections. And he says, "Hey, I want you to go out and check out some weed to put on your next boat." And he says, I says, "Where's it at?" He says, "It's up in the Wahira." I says, "Raphael, nothing in the fucking Wahira is going to be any good. You know that. It's going to be all dried out and fucking moldy and bullshit. We get our reefer from uh, Arakataka, around that area." That's a nice name. I love Arakataka.
Yeah.
And so he says, "Go ahead anyways." Or me and Sonny didn't have any, my partner, my new partner, Sonny didn't have any, we always wanted to go travel everywhere and look at reefer. We looked at reefer all the time, like 2 or 3 times a day, you know? And we go up there and there's this big mound, man. It's like 40, 50 feet in the air. It's like a pyramid, you know, and it's it's in the Wahira Desert. The desert is the desert. It's dry as can be, and it's like dusty and shit like that. So I start cutting some of them open and looking at it and go, "Fuck, no, this is no good." Keep going up, get to the top, and it's later on, it's getting in the end of the day, and we can't leave the Wahira at night. It's way too dangerous. You're gonna get killed. So we took the top apart and built us a nice little fort, and built a little wall around and put a sleeping quarter in there and everything. It was like Lego bricks or something, where you
Yeah.
move everything around. We made a nice little place to sleep there that night. So we slept on the 1,000,000 pounds. And this 1,000,000 pounds came from a guy named Lucho Castro. And I don't know who Lucho Castro was given that to, but he was a very good friend of mine. I put him in business. I put a lot of Colombians in business too, because once I got down there and they knew the demand, they had to fill the demand. And then the family started, the Davila family, the Vallada Blanca family, the Cardenas family. I know all the families and they knew all me
And what's it
because,
like hanging out with, big drug cartels and big drug kingpins like that?
I sat at a table one time with about 20 of them. And I sat at the head of the table, and Raphael, my guy, sat at the other end of the table. And I'm telling you, there's some serious, serious, serious people there. There was a guy named Jose Gacho or something like that. He turned out to be a big deal. They killed him and cut his eyeballs out and all sorts of shit. I mean, it's just something you go through. I mean, you had to do it. If you're invited, you got to go. I mean, I was invited to the families all the time. I mean, even families that I wasn't dealing with. And then
Right.
when my
Right.
connection died, he got killed. All the families in Santa Marta came to me and said, "We want to do business with you." And I says, I'm not going to do business with anybody right now. I'm just trying to make up my mind, because there was like 6 or 7 major families that wanted to do business with me. I was well known in Santa Marta.
And by the
Yeah.
way, I want to interject something. Tommy did not look like he looks now today on this podcast. Tommy looked like he looks in this book. Now, this hair was long red hair. He looked like a rock star, and it was very clearly he stood out, with all the Colombians. Nobody could miss him down there. So all these families recognize him not as a normal person, normal looking person, but with this guy with this long, long blonde red hair. Did you wear it in a braid or did you wear it loose down there?
I wore it in a braid and I wore it loose and I wore it in a ponytail, but still, it was like, I'm a walking gold brick while I was in Colombia.
Well,
I
Yeah,
was,
that's how they
I
looked at
was,
you, right? That's how they saw you too, right, Bruce? They
I
were
was,
they were like, this guy's bringing me gold.
oh yeah, and they would guard you mostly from the other families because they didn't want any of their families to steal their connection. We didn't know it. At least I didn't. I didn't know how valuable an American connection was to the Colombians. To me, the Colombians were the ones that I was thrilled to death that I had a
I wish I
connection.
had known you then.
Yeah, I wish I knew you then too.
Right. All right, so you're in Colombia for 7, 8 years, right? And you're loading boats up. You're still doing your thing. What possessed you to leave?
I did a load in 1981 And it was a subterfuge, you know? It wasn't a government thing like that, but it was some criminals that wanted to rip off the load from the beginning, and they succeeded at doing it. And this is a time when cocaine was fucking hitting. And I'm dealing with fucking assholes. They're doing cocaine that don't know their fucking ass from a hole in the ground, and they're spouting their mouth off, lying about everything, and they don't know how to get anything done. You know, people doing cocaine are fucking idiots. So I had to give up then because it got the mafia involved, it got the bikers involved. It just became too tedious. And I
Yeah.
said, "Well, this is fucking it. I'll lose the 40 fucking thousand pounds. I can afford it. Let's just." And the guy that set it up, I saved his life 2 times from the fucking Colombians, you know, and he was the thief. And I just one time in Miami and one time in New York, they were gonna kill him, and I had to stop him because, you know, I couldn't have that on my conscience.
Right. So, what made you leave Colombia? Just a bad run-in?
I left Colombia because I ran into my wife on Taganga Harbor on the beach. Taganga Harbor was the main harbor in Santa Marta where you sent marijuana out in the very beginning, like I did.
Hmm.
And I met her. She was Swedish, and I decided after this trip, and it all happened it congruently with the 81 trip and meeting her and everything. And I just said, "Oh, fuck this! I'm going to Sweden. They can't get me out of there. You know, I'm gonna have raise 2 kids and all that." I mean, this is a whole no story. This is the prison stories, Bruce. You know,
Right. So, what was it like in Sweden? I mean, after living in Colombia for 8 years.
beautiful, man. I mean, like Stockholm, I live in Stockholm. I had the nicest place in Stockholm, right on Strandvägen, which is the most prestigious street in Stockholm. And my landlord was a guy named Baron von Falkenberg, who was the partner to Albert Hoffman for Sandoz Laboratories in Switzerland.
Hmm.
You know who he is,
Mhm.
Bruce?
Oh, of course, he invented, or discovered LSD.
Yeah. So I move into this apartment, and there's a turret. You know, they got these turrets, the round part of the building, and it was made into a library. And every book in the library was about lysergic acid and mushrooms and everything like that. And so when I'm with the realtor, I'm looking at this, I'm going, man, this has got to be my place. So
So,
then I moved this there and had my first son, and then
and you still got millions and millions of dollars in the bank. I mean, you still got plenty of cash.
I got some gold lying around in Switzerland. And so then we moved to another house outside of Stockholm a little bit in a nice area, you know, to get out of all that. And then uh, my wife gives birth to our second son, and she's in the hospital. And I decide to go see her, of course. And I bring my first son with me. And as I'm leaving my house, I see a car down the road with 4 guys in it. And then I turn down the one street that I normally go in, and I look down that street. There's another car with 4 guys in it. Then the 2 cars start following me, and then I'm on my way to the hospital. So on the way to the hospital is a roundabout before you go over the Sodermalm Bridge into Stockholm. And I just kept going around the the roundabout, and they kept following me. I mean, I went round like 5 times, man. I'm going, uh-oh, it's either the mafia or the cops. You know, I can't figure
Right.
who's coming after me from the mafia. So I pull over in Sodermalm, which is a southern part of Stockholm, and they pull up behind me. They all jump out of the car with their guns out and everything like that. And I put my hands up and I says, "Listen, you guys, you do not have a problem here. Put your fucking guns away. I'm going to be peaceful. Nothing's going to happen. I got my son in the car. Just take it fucking easy. So they kind of chilled out. So they handcuffed me and threw me in the back of one car, and then they handcuffed me and they put my son in the back of the other car. And he's crying and wailing away, man. So I says, listen, you guys, you're going to have to put him in the back seat with me. And he said, no, we're not going to do that. So I kicked the fucking back window out of the car. And I says, listen, you guys, this shit's just starting right now. You're going to have to fucking kill me, or you're going to put my fucking son next to me right fucking now. They did. And then they get in the car and they're talking about, well, what are we going to do with him now? We got his son and we got him and we got to take him to jail. What are we going to do with the son? I says, listen, what you're going to do is you're going to take me and my son to the hospital where my wife is at with my second son, and you're going to drop him off there, and then you can have your way with me.
Now, she was in the hospital giving birth, right?
Yeah, the day before. That was a comforting situation.
Yeah, I bet. So did they do that? Did they drop your son off and then took you to jail?
Yeah. 6 months in solitary confinement. I tried to escape. That's a whole nother story. I think it's in the book.
Right. And then how long do you stay in Switzerland, and then where do you go?
You're getting that Switzerland confused with Sweden like everybody does.
Oh, sorry, I meant Sweden. Yeah.
So I stayed in Sweden. I went to went 6 months solitary confinement. That's not very easy to do. 6 months
Yeah.
solitary confinement. You got nobody. The only thing you got a book. They give you books. Then I went a 51-day fast. Went down to like 92 pounds, and then they
Oh, wow.
brought me to the Supreme Court of Sweden. And I mean, here's a fucking movie scene right here. You got 5 guys with fucking white wigs on, sitting up in a dais, fucking pontificating on how you're a big fucking asshole marijuana smuggler, you know? And it was all on whether they could extradite me or not.
Right.
And so what it boiled down to, they couldn't extradite me for continuous criminal enterprise because in the extradition treaty, you have to have similar crimes. So what the fucking government did, the United States government did, they passed an ex post facto treaty that included continuous criminal enterprise and conspiracy. And the fucking Swedes agreed with it. In each country, when you get extradited, you have to have exactly the similar law to get you extradited. But in my case, I was like a special case. They lied, steal, cheat, fucking everything was wrong. Then after 40 days, they're supposed to let me go. And after 40 days, after me banging on a door and knocking out, so you guys got to fucking let me go because you don't have the paperwork from the United States government yet. 43 days later, they fucking bring the paperwork in when the treaty says 40 days. It's an all scam, man. I mean, they want you, they'll throw you in the back of a bus and send you home.
Yeah. Yeah, so you were being followed, and all that happened because you were wanted in the United States. So that was that the FBI or CIA, or who were the guys in the cars?
No, that was the Department of Justice, way up high.
Yeah.
Like the associate of the Department of Justice. And actually, I dealt with John Roberts, that fucker. And
Yeah.
anyways,
Oh, do tell.
he, I filed a civil rights complaint against the Department of Justice for searching my house in Sweden without a warrant. And I took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and he was the opposing counsel. I became a lawyer while I was in prison. Got a lot of
Yeah.
people off a lot of time and stuff like that. Didn't have anything to do. I was hooked up with the blacks, the Indians, the mafia, the Arabs, and everything. Because I was helping them with their law work. But this was John Roberts wrote the brief to the United States Supreme Court as the Solicitor General in opposition to me not winning my suit against them for the illegal search of my house in Sweden. When you travel abroad, you carry your constitutional rights, especially
Uh,
if the United States government tells the Swedish government, go ahead and search your fucking house. And that's what happened in my case. So he's a liar and a piece of shit.
But how do you really
yeah,
feel
not
about him?
surprising. Yeah, not surprising. Right.
If I met him,
Seems
I
like
would
he's
think
kept
that he would
seems
know
like he's
anything
kept those
about
personality traits, right? So so what happens after you're busted? You're 40 days in prison. Do you get extradited?
Yeah, I got extradited by the U.S. Marshals out of Detroit. And as we're going through the airport, the chief of police of Stockholm hands me over to the U.S. Marshals in the airport. And the U.S. Marshals, a guy named Tony Bertoni, was the U.S. Marshal for Michigan at that time. He looks at me and he says, "Hey, Mr. Powell, we just brought a guy back from England, and we had to put him in a straitjacket and gag him." He says, "Are you going to give us any problem?" And I says, "Dude, I'm going to give you the biggest fucking problem in the world. You're not going to fucking believe it. I'm going to tear that plane apart. I'm going to kick you motherfuckers. I'm going to do everything, fuck that plane up, unless you take me over to that bar over there and buy me a beer." And
So
he
you're over at the so you're at the
This is in
bar
the
drinking a
Arlanda.
beer,
This is in the Arlanda airport in Stockholm when they're
right?
transferring me over to U.S. Marshals. So Tony Bertoni looks to the chief of police for Stockholm and says, "What should I do?" And he says, "If I were you, I'd take him over there and buy him a beer."
Buy him a beer. That's
They
right.
bought me a beer. They bought a liter beer, and they nearly pissed in their pants that they had to put up with a liter beer.
That's funny.
So they brought me back to Detroit. And I went to Milan, Michigan. There's a lot of stories in there between there.
Right. I
Or
mean, and are you a federal case also?
federal, definitely.
Yeah. And what were you charged with?
Continuous criminal enterprise, life with no parole. And by the way, just to get this straight, I never testified against anybody like Bruce didn't either, you
Yeah.
know? And for some reason, I think that's important.
It's definitely important. Certainly to the guys that you worked with. It's definitely important. But it shows your
And
character. I
besides
mean,
that,
Bruce.
those guys are all the ones that ratted on me. 120 witnesses against me.
Oh my goodness, 120. So what was that trial like? Sitting there listening to 120 people say he did it.
There wasn't a trial. The deal was, as I was uh, representing earlier, this girl worked in the prosecutor's office.
Right.
She overheard them say that with all these witnesses, we can't afford to bring him to trial because it's going to cost us like $2 or $3 million.
Oh my God.
So her boyfriend comes to visit me in prison in Milan. And I'm sitting with Tommy Sanito and John Calandra and all the famous gangsters in Milan. And he says, "Does that help?" And I says, "Yeah, man, that helps a lot. I mean, thank you so much." So that's when I started writing my plea agreement. My plea agreement is in the back of the book, and I wrote it. And there's a section in there where it says, "I will not testify in any grand jury or petit jury anywhere in the United States whatsoever against anybody." I put that in my plea agreement because that's how
Right.
honorable I am. I grew up in
Right.
a Catholic family where if I fucking snitched on one of my brothers, I'd have the living shit beat out of me immediately. You know? I mean, that's an ingrained thing. I could never do that. Even if I had 100 years, I wouldn't have done that.
Right. Right. Um, I think that's what probably made you so successful, and Bruce as well, right? There's honor amongst thieves, and like, what do you always say, Bruce? Right? You have to be honorable and honest, right?
Yeah,
And
and, I don't have a bad feeling for anybody that did cooperate with the government, like Fred and Ed, my partners out of Ann Arbor. We don't know the circumstances of
Etcetera, etcetera, etcetera.
yeah, I mean, there's very, very few people that had the balls to not cooperate and do their time.
Like
Uh,
2%,
yeah, and what percent, Tommy?
like 2%.
That's
I
about
was just
right.
talking to a customs friend of mine who worked on Steve Kalish's case, and he was telling me about how he found those 2 kilos of cocaine in a locker in a room or something like that, and that started their investigation on him. I grew up with him in high school, and he became Noriega's nemesis, And he was telling me about that. He said, he says, Tommy, you're an exception to the rule.
We are the exception,
Yeah.
and again, I don't have any bad feelings against anyone that I mean, that cooperated because, you know, who the hell
Bruce, that's
knows
nice for you. Bruce,
what's
that's nice for you. I love you. I love you because you have that feeling. But I'm on the fence. You know, I mean,
well, here's why, and you said something in your book that's similar to this. I wanna tell the story of the golden age of marijuana smuggling from 1960 to 1990. I wanna capture that. We were all weren't saints. You and me, even the guys that didn't snitch, did stupid things, but that we were kids, we were in our 20s. So a guy who rolls over because of whatever his circumstances are was doing a stupid thing in his 20s usually. So that's one thing. So in my podcasts and movie and documentaries. I just want to tell it like it is, the good, the bad, the ugly. If they rolled over, that's just what happened. And not that I highlighted a sentence from your book. You said that's just what happened. That's just something like that. That's the way it was. And I'm not going to judge the way it was. I mean, Billy the Kid, Wyatt Earp, we were all sort of that part of American history, like the Westerners. They weren't all saints. They were all
None of them were saints.
no, they all did
Right,
stupid
none of them were
things,
saints,
including
right.
us. So
That's
I just want to tell it like it is with no judgment and no animosity towards anything, anyone. I mean, we're finding out
I can
years.
definitely understand that, Bruce.
Yeah,
I understand your persona and I understand mine, but I'm always on the fence trying to figure it out. Ken Bear,
yeah.
me and him had a nice long talk about this, and I kind of appreciated him talking to him and explaining to me why it had to happen. But then again,
Yeah, and we'll have Kenny on one of these podcasts. Especially as we go into the whole history and all the other smugglers, uh, because again, this is part of history. And, we had Cecil on a couple episodes ago. He's 91 years old. We got to get him on before they all die. I mean, I'm
that was
younger than
amazing.
that's
most
right.
of the guys like Tommy,
That
but
was amazing.
yeah, isn't that? And I mean, how old are you,
Right, so
Tommy?
tell me about this plea deal. What was your plea deal? What did you agree to?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. So I started writing it after I found out that they couldn't afford to bring me to trial. So I knew I
Yeah.
had it in. And I didn't tell my attorney, and I had like the best attorney in Detroit. I'd already fired 5 attorneys or something like that. And so I started writing it, and I started writing it with my friends, Tommy Sunito, who ran the Cleveland crime syndicate, and John Calandra, you know, Danny, what's his name, that Irish guy, and stuff like that. They were killing Kovich, the mayor or something like that. And I was in with them, and I was working on my plea agreement with them. And so I think it's like a 13-page plea agreement. And one of the things is I was going to be transferred back to Sweden to do my time in Sweden. Okay. And there's a transfer of prisoner treaty with Sweden where I could have gone back. Okay. They love that. And then, the other one was that I will not be called upon the government to testify against anybody in a grand or petit jury anywhere in the United States. I'd do 10 years. I'd sacrifice my $8 million in sound advice of the company that I had started and other nefarious investments that I made in my life. It's all in the back of the book in the plea agreement. And so I finished the plea agreement. I never told my lawyer about it. His name was Robert Hurlbert. He was a great lawyer. And I pushed it under the window like the day before the trial. And I says, "What do you think of that, Robert?" He says, "What the fuck is this?" He says, "That's my plea. You didn't tell me anything about this, so I didn't help you on it, or we." He says, I says, "Just run it up to them and see if they'll accept it." You know. So it called for 10 years. My minimum, and I'm going to Sweden, and I don't have to snitch. And so he passes it up, and they go up there, and they says, "Hey, that's great. The only thing we're not going to do is we're not going to request his transfer to Sweden. We're not going to request the Swedish government to transfer him." And the fucking Swedes. And so, anyways, he sent it back down. He says they're not accepting it because of Sweden. I said, "Tell them to fuck off. Tell them to fuck off. Let's go to trial." And so he passes it back again, and then he passed it to a guy named Stephen Trott, who's the assistant United States attorney in Washington, D.C., and he okays it. This is okay. So now I'm going back to Sweden. I'm not snitching on anybody. I'm doing 10 years. I go to Sweden and do my time. I'll probably be out in 2 or 3 years, and I got a better prison situation and stuff like that. So I can't go wrong, better than life with no parole plus 70 years, which I started
Right.
with.
That's for sure.
And so bring it to the judge. The judge is Judge Freeman. Actually, used to be a friend of my my family attorney. And that's another story there. And he says, "I've read this plea agreement 3 times, and I don't understand it. And we're in open court, and I don't understand it." I says, uh, "Mr. Powell, do you understand it?" I says, "Yes, Your Honor, I wrote it." And he says, "Oh, okay." He says, "Well, I'm going to go back and read it again." So he goes back and read it again. He approves it. It says, "Yes. Okay, that's the deal. That's when I get sentenced and all that shit, you know? And then I got 10 years. I'm going to Sweden. And the next thing is for the United States government to make the initial request to Sweden that I be transferred to Sweden." Well, they did do that, but Sweden came back and said that I was not domiciled. Now, we know the word domicile, right? So I'm not domiciled in Sweden. I got a wife in Sweden. I got 2 kids in Sweden. I got a house. I got Swedish Social Security. I got a Swedish driver's license, and I go to Swedish schools. Uh, what does domicile mean again?
All of that?
And so Sweden comes back and says, "No, we consider you're not domiciled in Sweden." So then I
Wow.
went to Milan and Terre Haute and Lewisburg, you know, all those places. Those are all
All federal penitentiaries here in the States?
no, yeah, federal
Wow.
penitentiaries. Lewisburg, Terre Haute, Talladega, Tallahassee, Eglin,
What years were
Whiston.
those?
Why'd you move around so much in 10 years?
Because I moved around because it was a technique that I used with my legal acumen. When I got into prison, I started studying law right away with the baddest dudes in the prison, and I learned a lot about CCE. The first thing I learned is that if you have a habeas corpus in an appellate court, the federal prison cannot move you. So when I learned that, I always kept a habeas corpus in the appellate court, so the warden couldn't fucking send me to Sandstone or to Minnesota to freeze my ass off, because he always promised to do that because I was suing him for asbestos. They they poured asbestos all over every federal inmate in the federal system, and they're all got asbestosis by now. But
Oh, shit.
so that kept me in control of where I was going. So when I was in Milan, I refused to send me to Tallahassee because I wanted to get closer to my home. Like you, Bruce, you wanted to go to Pleasanton. Man, they wouldn't fucking even think about sending me to Pleasanton. And then, so I filed a FOIA request for my address according to what the Bureau of Prisons had. Well, the Bureau of Prisons had my address down in Florida, so then I filed a civil rights action, a suit against them for denying me of my equal protection law or something, and not putting me down in Tallahassee where it belonged, you know. But then finally, my attorney was on the plane with Michael Quinlan, who was the director of the Bureau of Prisons, and he was flying to Washington, D.C. with him. And he brought it up that I didn't want to go to Sandstone, Minnesota, that I wanted to go to Tallahassee. And because my lawyer was paying for the flight, Quinlan agreed to it and said, okay, we'll send Powell to fucking Tallahassee. So I hear about that before my warden hears about it. Warden calls me up into the bleachers. He used to like to sit in the bleachers and go, come here, you know. And I go up there. I said, hey, warden, I'm going to Tallahassee. He said, what the fuck are you talking about? I said, I'm going to Tallahassee, dude. Forget that Sansom shit. Oh, he was pissed.
Right.
Because I was suing them for asbestos exposure too. And I had that in federal court. I had that in the appeals court. I mean, I probably filed 10, 15 suits against the Bureau of Prisons and Department of Justice and federal government. I probably won half of them, dismissed half of them, and pushed the other half, and that was it. But I did pretty good. United States Court of Appeals called me the most. United States Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., where I did an oral argument against the Bureau of Prison, called me the most prolific pro se litigant in the United States at the time.
So you're causing a ruckus in the prison system. You're bouncing around. You finally do your 10 years. You get out, and then what happens?
Then I just kind of, I'm in my hometown. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I know I can't do anything illegal or anything like that, and I just chilled out. I didn't do anything really. I started doing computer work and fixing computers and working on computer systems.
I just want everyone out there to realize when you're looking at the marijuana industry, the multi-gazillion dollar industry it is today legally, when you want to know where it all started, it really did start with Tommy Powell and his associates in that era, way before me. What, I guess maybe 4 years before me. And it's all outlined in this amazing book, which I love the title, Reefer, How Smugglers Won the War. What was this? How Smugglers Won the War on Marijuana. A great read, a great historical document on where this all started, this whole movement. That's where it all started. I may be called the king of pot. The media gave me that name because I was the largest smuggler in West Coast history, certainly not the largest in American history. There was a lot of guys bigger than me and a lot of guys the same size as me, but it was all created. The history began by Tommy Powell, and we covered how that happened in last episode, pretty much last episode more than this episode, the roots of our industry. Thank you, Tommy Powell. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, because there's a whole multi-billion-dollar industry that is being taxed too much, I might add, as well. And thanks for putting in the work back in the day, Tommy, for all the rest of us.
Yeah, it
That's
just
for
took
sure.
it was a matter of being in the right place at the right time, just being ahead of everybody. For some reason, some of my concepts have been a little bit more than
Yeah.
most people.
Right.
Well, I want to add one.
Well, there
I
you
want
have
to
it,
add one
everybody.
more.
That
No,
is.
I want to add one more thing.
Okay.
One more thing. Tommy's being very not bragging enough about himself. Okay.
Humble.
It wasn't
Humble.
just being in the right place at the right time. It was having the balls, the gumption to do all this stuff. I didn't have the balls and the gumption. That's not that it wasn't my job to go down to Colombia and go up into the mountains or go to, to look at the big hash loads in Europe. Yes, I was there unloading the boat just like Tommy was, and we were in the middle of it. But he had the balls to do a million things. It wasn't just the right place at the right time. He's being way too modest. Tommy, you're way too modest. You're a hero in my eyes. You're a hero in the industry's eyes. You had the balls to go out and do it, and you had the and whatever that personality is. I mean, even when you went to prison, When you kicked out the little back window of the car, if they didn't didn't let your son come in the car with you, that takes a lot of guts and a lot of balls, and I appreciate that kind of spirit and that, A personality, Z personality, renegade personality, outlaw personality. You are great, and you still are.
Alpha male prime. Yet
Yes.
another alpha male prime.
What is
Right.
right is right.
That's right. That's right. All right, Tommy, we really appreciate you coming on. It's been a lot of fun. And don't forget to pick up Tommy's book. It's called Reefer: How Smugglers Won the War on Marijuana. Get it at Amazon and wherever else you buy your books. And we'll put a link to it on the website. So check out www.becomingtkop.com. Bruce, as always a lot of fun talking about the old days of smuggling. Tommy, a big thank you for coming on and sharing your life and sharing your stories. I'm Todd Dankin. He's Tommy Powell. And that other handsome guy is Bruce Perlowin, the King of Pots. And this is Becoming the King of Pot. We'll see you next time.